What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Alternative Influence Coaching. This is our vlog. This is Terry. I hope you know that by now. I'm happy. I'm actually really excited to talk with Nick Carrier today. And Nick has got a podcast. You might have heard of it. It's called Best of You. Everybody I know has heard of it. So
Well, that's good.
you got me doing something right. So I got to know Nick. Nick was kind enough to have me on his show. And going through the process of being on your show and getting scheduled and watching your watching what you're doing on social media, listening to the show, I was like, hey, this kid has got it down. So I thought, why don't we bring him on and we'll talk a little bit more about how to do this right? Because you and I talked on the podcast about vision, and they've heard me talk about vision a ton, about having a vision, casting a vision. But then there's that whole practical steps thing. Mm-hmm. So maybe we get a little taste of vision, Nick Carrier, step one.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first off, I appreciate the kind words. I mean, it's definitely one of those things where you said this kid is doing it right, and I appreciate that. And I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm doing more things right than I was in the beginning. But as I learned from your experiences, and I love your book so much, A Failurer's Guide to Business Success, I had to do a lot of things obviously wrong to be able to get it right. I didn't always have this organized booking platform to bring people on a podcast. I didn't always have a very clear system set out to be able to make it look professional and make it run smoothly. Yeah. So it definitely took a lot of time to get to some of those things, and that kind of plays a part in casting a vision. So in terms of casting a vision for me, how it worked is I knew when starting my business that I am just obsessed with getting closer to the best version of myself, kind of whatever that means. And so it started off as kind of a relatively vague vision, but I think that entrepreneurs and just anybody in general, you have to be okay with a relatively vague vision first. But there still has to be some sort of vision.
Right.
And then after that, you have to take aim with this wide vision and start casting your net in a number of different places. You have to take action here based off of that wide vision. And then as you start taking some of these small steps, then those steps give you feedback. Okay, this felt right, let's do that again, or let's do something similar to that again. Or this was wrong, let's stay away from that. So the more you take action, the more that vague vision can start to narrow, and the more and more it narrows as an entrepreneur or just as trying to get closer to the best version of yourself, the more you can take targeted action towards that vision, and the more your vision gets more clear and clear to you.
More refined.
Definitely.
That's a great way to say it. I think it's got to be fluid. It's got to be malleable, right? And I don't know that we all think like that. We think vision, passion, I have to be dead set on this one thing. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, it's been very similar to yours. Like when it's dead set one thing, you tend to fail a little more. You tend to fumble a little more. The broader the piece, like I like what you're saying, the broader the piece, the more nets you can cast, I guess, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Well, so and the way I think about this a lot, one of my things that I like to think about, or the skill that I think is the most important skill in order to get closer to the best version of yourself, is to be able to follow through with the promises that you make to yourself.
Yeah.
But that starts with casting the vision and then creating an action step based off of that vision. So by creating the best vision that you can possible, you create an action step based off of that, and then you follow through, and then that provides you with feedback. But there are certain times, like we said, you have to be malleable, you have to be flexible. There are certain times when the action steps that you create aren't the best action steps because you're still trying to figure it out. You don't know what the best action steps are to create. So yes, you have to create the action step, but then you have to be open to the feedback by getting the feedback by that telling you that was wrong.
Right.
Go somewhere else. So
that's huge, though.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
Two things. Follow through. And then you got to read the situation.
Yes.
Man, we should be done. I mean, that's a goal by itself. So in laser focusing your vision, you're doing what version of what you're doing now is actually at play to how wide the vision was in the beginning. Was it a big pivot? Was it a tiny pivot? Was it always a part to do best you in the way that you're doing the podcast currently?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So like I said, kind of the initial vision was just for me to help myself get closer to the best version of myself, almost selfishly, and then to help other people get closer to the best version of themselves, because I think that is the most important thing that every individual can do. I think that's the biggest responsibility that all of us have as human beings, is to get closer to the best version of themselves. So the vision early on was, how can we help people get closer to the best version of themselves? And I always loved podcasting or listening to podcasts and got really into them myself. And I felt like that was a great way for me to get closer to the best version of myself by listening to other podcasts around self-improvement. But I was like, what if I created like the Best You podcast, where that's what we talked about? How I bring on people who I feel like have done a successful job in their life up to this point, getting closer to the best version of themselves. I can ask them how they've gotten there, and then I can ask them how they're continuing to upgrade themselves to get to that better version of themselves and continue to upgrade from there. So that was kind of the initial vision, to get information based off of that.
Right.
And my professional background is fitness, and so I started off by basically just creating workout plans for people, because that was the initial way to fund it. And I knew it wasn't one that was going to be long term, but like I said, it's the initial way to kind of bring money in, at least have enough money to be able to run a business.
Right.
And so now, all the way fast forward to today, what I do is run 10-week fitness goal setting programs with people. And so what I like to say is it is a goal setting program, but with a health and fitness goal. So the goal setting methodology that I teach to people can be applicable and applied to whatever goal that you want to achieve in your life.
Absolutely.
And step one for that is create a vision.
Yeah.
Where do you want to be by what particular date? Once we have that, once I help my clients determine that, it's like, okay, what are the 2 or the 3 most important things that you need to do every single week that are going to predict the success of that vision or that goal? And then, okay, what are the small little weekly commitments that we can make that increase the likelihood that we follow through on those 2 or 3 most important things? And then let's have accountability sessions every single week to see whether or not you did them. If you did them, great. What worked well that week? What can we do again?
Yeah.
If you didn't do them, why didn't you do them? What set you up for failure, and what can we change moving forward to increase the likelihood that you actually succeed?
Yeah, I like that. That's solid. So I like what you said there, and I think this is something I want to make sure everyone hears, is there's always got to be a fund. There's always got to be a little side hustle. There's always got to be something that facilitates the dream, right? So fitness for you as a professional was facilitating the dream. Don't forget that. I think that's key.
Yeah, like that was one of the steps in your books.
Yeah,
you
gotta
have to have
hustle,
you have to have some sort of revenue coming in, and I teach group fitness classes outside of that as well. And like I said, the only thing coming in, and a podcast doesn't make money for most people. You have to have a ton of downloads and streams like that, and even if you have a ton, you have to figure out good strategies to be able to monetize it.
Correct.
So you've got to find a way to fund a podcast and fund some things. So that's definitely an important step.
Very important step. Yeah, your drive is like watching you do it. There's so much consistency. Like, it inspires me. I took a week off of vlogging, and I was like, man, I guess I gotta get back in this. And I did your podcast, and I was like, now I'm fired up. Let's go. Let's go.
I love it.
It's that passion transfers, and that's the thing that I think it's important too. Is like, from out here with the vision, down here with the vision. Now that you're here, you've got more energy. You become more passionate. So you're not. It's not either or. That helps.
Yeah. One thing I want to say in terms of like the wide vision to start, I think a lot of people, because they have a wide vision, they think that it's not narrow enough yet in order to take action on it. Mm-hmm. But my message to there is the only way to narrow it is to actually take action and receive the feedback.
That's huge.
And so you have to be willing to go out on a limb, and you have to be willing to do things that you don't know are going to get you any kind of result that you want. Yeah. You have to be willing to take that leap of faith to take a next action so that it can give you feedback on that vision.
Was it scary?
To be honest, I wasn't ever scared. I think I've always had a good amount of confidence in myself and my ability to be consistent with following through. And I think a lot of that was instilled just in childhood and stuff like that. It was definitely a little bit scary, but I don't think it ever would get to
slow you down.
Yeah, not enough to slow me down. I think for me, any kind of scary or fearful emotion just sparks me to like keep going.
Yeah. So on that note, what level of advice you would give someone who is that person who is looking at their vision and they're scared to death to take a step?
I think you just have to narrow it down to what's the success look like today.
Yeah.
Because when creating a goal, you have to, yes, people say dream big, set lofty goals, and I agree with that. But if you don't see any sort of clear path towards that, you're not going to take action on it. Right. The moment that you feel that your actions are futile, that they're not going to get you closer to where you want to be, you're going to quit. Mm-hmm. So you have to scale back whatever is your wide vision to what's success today. What can I have done by the end of today to feel like I've gotten just a little bit closer to my wide vision that I have kind of created at the moment. Right. So in order to prevent you from stopping because of your fearfulness or you're scared or you don't know exactly what action step to take, you have to break it down to how can I be successful today? How can I be successful in the next hour?
Yeah.
And
I like that. Yeah.
Because that's much more tangible for people.
That's step one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, step one. I think that's really good. You got to boil it down. You got to get moving. I like to think about that in a way of like, don't let fear stop you. Let it fuel you. Mm. If it could be the filter in which you can run some things through that filter, and then hopefully you dissolve the fear, mm-hmm. And you get to that, like you said, you get to that action step.
I like that. I'm going to steal that phrase. Don't let fear stop you. Let it fuel you. I think. Damn, I wish I said it like that.
Right? Whatever, man. Get out of here. No. So let's talk about podcasting.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy, right?
No.
It's not easy to be successful podcasting. It's not easy to come up with unique content, which I feel like you do so freaking well. So give our wannabe podcasters, and you know who you are, out there. Maybe I'm even one of them. I don't even know. I'll be speaking to myself on this vlog. So give the podcasters a little bit of a fine tune. Like it's not just buying a mic and some headphones, some really cool headphones, and hit and record, right? Mm-hmm. So like, give them a tip for creativity if you can.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is you have to know that what you want to talk about or podcast about or interview people on is something that fires you up. Mm-hmm. Because there's going to come a time where you're like, I don't want to do this interview. There have been a number of times where I'm tired, it's been a long week, it's at the end of the day, whatever it is, and I'm like, the last thing I want to do is have a freaking interview.
Yeah, right.
But once I actually get into the interview and I'm talking about the topic that I'm so passionate about, I'm refueled again. I'm like, this was the best thing ever.
I'm on fire.
This was the best thing ever. So, number one is you have to find something that fires you up.
Yeah.
And that you love, not just something that you woke up one morning and was like, I love this today. It's like, no, this is something that you love, because the second thing is you have to know that you're going to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
If you're not consistent with releasing new episodes, with coming up with new content, it's not going to be successful. It's just not. The number one thing you have to do as a podcaster is release consistent content, because you have to stay in the mind of your listener as frequently as possible, or they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
So I think number one is you have to find something that you're 100% passionate about.
Super excited.
Yeah. And then two is you have to know that you're going to be willing to be consistent.
So let's talk about consistency. What is your hack for consistency? Are you booked way out in advance you got a ton of content? How far out do you shoot? I know I've started with a large catalog and I got a little bit complacent. I'm like, I'm just going to, everything's auto-fed. This is great.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh crap, no, I don't have any fresh content. Like I know where I suffer. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so in regards to like the tactical things, I'll go back all the way to when I released a podcast back in October of 2018. When I released it, I had 17 interview episodes. And so to give everyone a little background, I release 2 episodes every single week. On Monday, I release an interview episode, and then on Thursday, I release a solo episode that's somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and it's my 3 takeaways from the interview that I did on that Monday.
Yeah.
And so when I first started the podcast, I had 17 interview episodes already created, so 17 weeks of the Monday episodes, but then I would just go week by week creating the Thursday episodes. And ever since, it's always evolved in regards to how much I have down the pipeline. It's definitely a huge ease on your mind if you have a lot planned out.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to today, right now I probably have 6 interviews for the next 6 Mondays, and then I maybe have 3 or 4 more scheduled for the upcoming weeks. But now getting guests has just been so much easier. In the beginning, it was me reaching out to a bunch of people, as many people as I could, and then hoping some would kind of trickle in, or asking a friend if they know somebody I could interview. But now it's gotten a little easier because past podcast guests will refer me to people. I'll get emails in from assistants of people who want to have whoever they represent on my show. I have a book publishing company who I work with, and they send me books of some of their people they represent and say, will you interview this person? And so it's gotten a lot easier in regards to being consistent on the tactical side.
Right, yeah.
But in terms of just consistency in general, I have never feared not having a podcast episode to release, because I knew that I was just committed to having a podcast episode to release.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't have a interview episode ready for a Monday, I would go back, and I've only done this one time, and it wasn't because I didn't have an interview, but I put clips from 3 different interviews together and put it as an episode. So if your mind is committed, you're going to find a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's getting another interview, whether it's finding another way to create a unique piece of content. So I think consistency is 2 things. You have to find the tactical ways that allow you to be consistent.
Right.
But then 2, it's a mindset thing. If you're committed, you're going to find a way. If not, you're going to find an excuse.
Yeah, that's huge. I hope that when you're all listening to this, like, that should help you weekend podcasters. Like, if you're thinking, man, I don't know that I love it like that. Like, I don't know that I love it enough to be that committed. I hope the writing's on the wall then for that. But then there's some of you out there like, no, I am that committed, but it sounds really hard and technically difficult, right? That like you're saying, that tactical approach. How much of like the digital stuff, like the tech savvy stuff of podcasting did you know? Like video editing, for instance.
0.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely 0.
I think everyone should be surprised by how often that's the case.
Oh my gosh, 0. I had none. I scraped things together in the beginning. I had one microphone, and I bought just a random little camera, and I stuck one microphone in between 2 people. Then I continually added on as I learned more, but I had no idea how to edit. I watched courses on how to edit some audio, very, baseline type things, but it doesn't take a whole lot in terms of just getting into it.
Yeah.
And so if people ever have the hesitation, if they are committed and they are passionate, but they're hesitant simply because of the tactical things, it's like, no, don't be hesitant because of the tactical things. It is not hard to figure out.
Right. Just take baby steps. Right.
Take baby steps.
I remember stepping into Train OD, which is the fitness page, and thinking, I do not know how to edit. I'm going to do this in one take. So I got really good at doing things in one take, and then I got really good at editing.
That's hysterical.
And I was like, I can take a break now.
Yeah.
This is great. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing for me. Like, for years I had tech support, and I had that built into the businesses the gym that we ran. We had a guy who did that. As I pulled away from the gym, I'm thinking, I can do this on my own, and it wasn't that difficult.
No.
And you go from like, this is terrifying, to, oh wow, okay, I did that pretty quick. What time is it? I still got time to go get coffee.
Yeah. and you know what's actually kind of great about not knowing it and having to learn it yourself is, one, when you learn it yourself, you have a greater appreciation for it.
Yeah.
And if somebody else ends up doing it for you, you know that you appreciate it a lot. And then two, if you know how to do it and you want to hire somebody to do it for you, then they don't have to know it already. If you know how to do it and you can lay out a step-by-step guide to how to edit your podcast episode, then you can teach them how to do it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times early on, I was okay with learning it because then I could demonstrate it to somebody else, and that's what I've done, and it's been huge, and now I appreciate it so much more.
That's the key right there. Oh man, it's plenty of wisdom already. I would love to keep going, but our time is limited. Nick, is there anything that you want to say? Any final tips you want to give, just to encourage? I think overarching, we've talked about your vision and the practical steps. We've talked about how to tactically achieve these things. But what do you have for everyone and just setting a goal? Like as a goal setter, like we talked about doing that. Any tips or any ideas you have just to get people off their butt?
Yeah, 100%. Like I mentioned earlier, the number one skill that you can develop, that you can practice to get closer to the best version of yourself is to follow through with the promises that you make to yourself. And that starts small. Mm-hmm. That starts with, I'm going to wake up at 5:30 a.m. and doing it. Or maybe it's writing down, I'm going to read for 15 minutes and doing it. If you can trust yourself and build this reputation with yourself for following through on the small things, you can gradually start to upgrade those tasks. You can gradually start to follow through on the slightly more difficult things. You can start reading for 20 minutes. You can start reading for 30 minutes. And I'm using reading or waking up as an example, but there's so much business application to maybe I'm going to do market research for 15 minutes and then it turns into 30 minutes. It turns into having a conversation with somebody else. So I say this because the most important thing that entrepreneurs need to do, anybody needs to do in order to improve any area of their life is to take action and is to follow through. But you have to have built a reputation with yourself that you are the type of person who is going to do what they said they're going to do.
Yeah.
And you form that reputation by starting small, but you have to deliberately write it down, say it out loud, say what you're going to do, and then do it. Make that commitment, follow through. Make it, repeat it, follow through. And if you can do that, then you can start to slowly optimize what those action steps are, and then it's just going to be a snowball effect. You can start following through with the big things and bigger things and bigger things. And for anybody to improve any area of their life, that is going to be the key.
It's structure. That's solid right there. I appreciate that. It's been awesome having you. I want to keep talking, so y'all gonna have to go because bandwidth. We're gonna have Nick back on in the future, hopefully. Guys, I hope you found this very insightful. I hope you found it helpful. Please comment and tell us what you think. Nick, again, 100%. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course.
It's been awesome.
It was a blast. Thanks for having me on.
So, guys, this has been Alternative Influence Coaching, and we will see you again soon. See ya.